We didn't know at the time what airline companies had been what. There was just speculation that it was an American Airlines flight that had gone into the North Tower. The other flights were missing in action and were not accounted for. They didn't know what airlines. They weren't releasing that to the public. So prior to this United Airlines flight hitting the South Tower, I called our coordinator in New York City immediately, and she answered the phone, and I said to her, I said, what is going on? Is anybody from United involved? And she said, Surya, we can't find 2 of our airplanes. They're missing. They're gone. They're not on radar. We have no communications with them, and we don't know where they're going, and we don't know anything at this point. We just can't find 2 of our aircraft. And then she proceeded to tell me that the 2 that they couldn't find had departed from Boston and had departed from Newark. This was not public information at the time. And she further proceeded to tell me that of that, all 4 of the pilots were New York based. And being a flight attendant for United Airlines for 13 years and many years out of New York, I was an onboard supervisor for most of those years, what they call a purser, the lead flight attendant, who briefs every flight with the pilots. So I had very intimate communications and relations with the pilots, or I had at the time with the pilots. So I knew, she even said to me, she said, Surya, you're gonna know all 4 of them. She goes, I can't release their names right now, but she goes, I know you know all 4. So just prepare yourself. Why? Why would they do that to my friends? I mean, why? We didn't know it was terrorism. We didn't know it was a bomb. We didn't know what it was. But what we saw from the images of the first plane going in, you can imagine what we were sitting there in anticipation, not knowing what was going to happen. And then when they saw the images and video feeds started coming in that it was a United flight that hit the South Tower, pretty much as I was on the phone with the coordinator, I mean, you just can't imagine. I used to work Flight 175. I was an onboard supervisor in Boston when they inaugurated a wide-bodied 767 flight from Boston to LAX. So at the time, they wanted pursers or onboard supervisors that had been properly trained and qualified to work those flights. So in April, I believe it was either April of '99 or April of 2000, they inaugurated that flight, and I was on it. I flew it, and I flew it with Michael Theroux. At the time, I did not know he was on 175 that day and had basically been brutally murdered. But in my mind, when she told me they were missing 2 aircraft, I think I fell to the floor. In disbelief. In a very personal way, you know, aircraft I had worked and been on, people I'd worked with and been with for many years, I couldn't imagine what was going on to them at that moment in time. I don't think I could move. I sat at my dining table waiting for the phone call, stayed on the phone with the coordinator, and as the hours went by and they, 93 went into Pennsylvania. They weren't even sure it was a United plane at the time. They wouldn't release that to the public. We knew. And then later in the day, she called me to tell me the names of the crew members. That's really when I got upset and I got angry. I was so mad. Why would somebody do this to these people that had nothing to do with anything in the world? They were brutally murdered on these planes, brutally. They were the first people to be attacked in this country. And how in the world did our country allow this to happen? Honestly, looking back, I hate to tell the American public this, but this is the truth. Us flight attendants and pilots, we used to joke about, one day something bad's gonna happen, because at the airports around the United States, most of it was contracted out to third parties. These third parties some of them spoke English, some of them didn't. Many times you would go through the line. I remember going through the line in Boston, in the security line there, and they would not even look at you when you went through or look at your bags. They were busy having conversations. Many a time we joked about it, that one day something bad was gonna happen. This was the airline business, people like us talked about it. Many, many people came into this country. We don't know their origins. We don't know where they're going. We don't know where they came from. We have no idea who they are. And I'm at the airports with a background check, security check, and I'm getting, I'm getting scrutinized. And I realized very quickly on that whatever changes were made were basically whatever was in the public's eye. It was for public perception, because the public wasn't out in the remote areas of our borders. They weren't in those areas to see that most of these borders, like on the northern border, have no fencing. Most of the fencing on the southern border is in the cities and shortly around the cities, because that's where people can see it. They don't see the remote areas. They don't know that at the airports, the gate agent who just checks you in at the airport, the passenger, is not made to go through airport security. They don't see that. They go through a side door. They don't see that the guy who puts your bag, the ramp agent who loads your bag onto the airplane, the bag that was just security screened because you saw it in the public, he doesn't have to go through airport security. He goes around the side. So any changes that were made were just changes to this day that were in the public's eye. And I got together with the widows of the pilots of 9/11 who are in my documentary, Green Cards for Al-Qaeda, A to Z. They gave me their personal mementos, they gave me their hugs, and they said, Surya, please, this movie is so important what you're finding out, because we feel like our husbands died in vain. We feel like the people died in vain, because any security changes really to Homeland Security and our national security have been for public perception, have not been really fundamental, changes on the inside. And I said, you know what? I've seen it every day, living at the border and then going through the airports. I know. And I said, I'll do everything I can to at least present to the public through 15,000 miles of journey on this film over 45 days. At least I'll be able to present to them the visuals, expert testimony. We have the 9/11 Commission in the film. We have federal agents, undercover agents. We've got a very good list of people whose credentials have nothing to do with anything else other than national security, telling you exactly what I felt and what I saw every day, that really and truly changes were cosmetic. They were for the public perception.